So my wife and I went out for my birthday. And of course, that meant I went to Denton, Texas, and went to my favorite bookstore in the world, Recycled Books. And of course, I bought books. So here we are, another book haul video, this time a birthday book haul. We also went to the half price books near my house. And well, let's get into it. So usually I would save the best for last, but I'm not doing that today. We have Dwellers in the Darkness by August Derleth, and Arkham House, first edition hardcover. It's not a first edition for all the stories, but this is a first edition of this collection from 1976. And this is awesome. This is actually the first physical copy I have found outside of states that border Wisconsin, which is where Arkham House is from, where August Derleth is from. It was really funny. For the longest time, I thought I had to go somewhere bordering Wisconsin to find an August Derleth book because I had such good luck in Illinois. So let's move on. I had been looking for this next one for a while. Shadow and Claw by Gene Wolfe. I absolutely love this series, and I had already found a copy of the second one, Sword and Citadel. So I was super hyped to find a matching book. That was real good. I'm only 2 books into this book haul, but I think we're going to do this differently. These books are fantastic, but they're hard to read. They're not hard because they're poorly written or they're written in some archaic language. They're hard to read because if you just read them at a surface level, you're not getting everything you can out of them. They need a reread, or they need just for you to be aware of the depth the books have. The more you give these books, the more you will get out of them. They're very, very good. They're very hard to read. They're a challenge, like a deadlift PR is a challenge. When you've hit it, you know, and you get so much out of it. It's so rewarding. Like all that work paid off. And so I highly recommend them, but you just need to keep in mind that they can be a challenge, a very, very good challenge. This little distraction jumped in my lap while I was filming, so I thought everyone should meet Court Gentry, Pickles. I named him Court Gentry after one of my favorite characters in the Mark Greaney novels, the Gray Man series, and my daughter insisted that he also be called Pickles. So this is Court Gentry Pickles. He's a beautiful little boy and a bit of a goblin. He destroys my things, but I love him. I got to add another Roger Zelazny Book Club edition hardcover to my collection. I have quite a few now. And speaking of Roger Zelazny, he's fantastic. I don't understand how people don't talk about him more. Lord of Light is probably the best speculative fiction book I have ever read. And I was super annoyed when I finished it because I've never seen that book listed in a top 100 science fiction or fantasy. I've never seen it listed in a top 20 science and fiction fantasy of the 1960s. Like I don't understand. Like the book should be more well known. It's absolutely beautiful, and everything he writes is like that so far that I've read. He might be becoming one of my favorite speculative fiction writers of all time. He's real good. You should read him. This next wonderful book, well, I say wonderful based purely on book club hardcover edition aesthetics because I haven't read the books yet. The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper. I keep seeing the series highly recommended in a ton of different books on fantasy. I've gotten to that point in my life where I'm now reading books about books. And Michael Moorcock recommends The Dark is Rising. Stephen King has recommended The Dark is Rising. And so I was super happy to find my favorite thing in the world. I love Omnibus and I love book club edition hardcovers. And so now I have a book club edition hardcover omnibus of the entire series. So yeah, I can't wait to get to that book too. This will be sooner than later because I've been on a tear when it comes to science fiction and fantasy of the last 50 years-ish. This one is very cool, but I'm pretty sure that almost no one has read it. The Neon Bible by John Kennedy Toole. John Kennedy Toole wrote my favorite book of all time, A Confederacy of Dunces. And this book was written when he was a teenager, and it was never supposed to be published. The manuscript was found after he had passed away, and there was a whole hubbub about whether or not this was even ever going to be published. Some of his family didn't want it published, others did. Uh, it talks about it at the beginning of the book. But what makes this special is it's a hardcover, and I didn't even know it existed, and it's a hardcover first edition. I had a trade paperback, and yeah, I was just blown away by this. And what's funny is this was when we were at Half Price Books, and I had a big old stack of books in my hands, and I told my wife, we need to leave. I have too many books. This is going to be expensive. And we were standing on one of the fiction aisles. She's done this a couple times now. She's like, oh, look at this. And she pulls this off the shelf, and we crack it open and see that it's a first edition. And I'm like, well, you did this. I have to buy this now. So the reason this is more expensive is you, which she's okay with it too. She loves the Confederacy of Dunces, and I don't know if she's read this yet. It was very short. I will warn that the book is very depressing. It's about a teenager in a town that just kind of sucks. Like, his home life sucks. His school life is okay, but he doesn't fit in at all, which, is every teenager, I guess. But he is just trying to escape. And I don't know if I was depressed at the time that I read it, or it made me depressed when I was reading it. But when I finished it, I felt a lot better. So maybe that book should only be read by the diehard John Kennedy Toole fans. Super cool. First edition. Something else to add to my giant collection of books. This book, Magic Kingdom for Sale by Terry Brooks, was recommended to me by a friend. I have a paperback edition, and then I found this hardcover first edition at Recycled Books because they're the best. So please go check the place out. It's great. And yeah, I'm excited to get to that book. I've never read it. It has an interesting story, and a friend recommended it, so I'm gonna move it up in the queue and really give it a chance. This next one is awesome for me and very few other people, and they're wrong. The D&D 4th edition Forgotten Realms campaign guide. 4th edition D&D is fantastic. I have absolutely fallen in love with 4th edition. I ran an introduction for my wife and my daughter, and my wife was like mad at the end of it. She's like, why was this not popular? Like, this is fun. This is incredibly fun. And like the PC program for building characters, it's such a breeze. It's so cool. And everything is so intuitive, like gameplay and stuff, and reading your character sheet, and you have your powers, and all of your stats are already calculated on there. And I don't get it. 4E is so good. Anyways, I will eventually be making a 4E video. I own a ton of the hardcovers now, and a ton of just 4E in general. And so, yeah, we'll get to that, and we'll have a good chat. This last one still has the Half Price Books receipt in it, but the Monster Hunter International Employees Handbook and Role Playing Game. Monster Hunter International is a book series by Larry Correia, and it's good. He's a gun nut, firearms instructor. It's really cool to read like a urban fantasy where it's a group of monster hunters and they use guns correctly, and so it's nice to have realistic weapon handling, gunfighting tactics and stuff like that written into a book series. Now the books are hyper masculine, borderline toxic, and so just bear that in mind. Like the women aren't like damsels in distress or anything. It's not like a He-Man Woman Haters Club or anything, but you gotta go in knowing that these dudes are like combat bros most of the time. And sometimes he writes them in a way where it's obvious that it's intentional and that these people are toxic masculine people, and usually to their detriment. But yeah, the series is good. Don't read any of the ones that he didn't write. It just feels like they're kind of phoned in, or I didn't enjoy them. I don't mean to disparage the author that wrote them, but they didn't feel the same. So I highly recommend the first 4 or 5. They're very good. You really invest in the characters. The audiobooks are amazing. So if you want something that's it's like a junk food read, go for Monster Hunter International in audiobook form. Just crush them while you're crushing it at the gym, or working in the yard, or working. And I don't know anything about the RPG. The funny story about the book is I sent a picture of it in my group chat with my brothers, and my best friend, who I consider a brother, which is why he's in the brothers group chat, uh, said, "Well, did you buy it?" And I was like, "No, it's $30. It's hard to justify. I'm not really going to play the game. It'd just be fun to look through and own." And he's like, "Well, go back and buy it here." And he sent me the money for it over Facebook. So yeah, that was my birthday present from him. So that was pretty cool. Last but certainly not least, a good friend of mine wanted to get me something in my book collecting sphere without getting me something I already had. And, that's getting more and more difficult to do as I'm encroaching on 1,200 books owned. And so he did the best thing ever and got me this absolute banger of like the best of Batman, which I cannot wait to dig into. I absolutely love Batman comics. And I don't own a lot of graphic novels or comic books. I usually do all of my reading digitally. And so I am super hyped about that. And then we have the best thing. I was absolutely shocked. It's almost impossible to see under the lights. Batman The Dark Knight Returns Collector's Edition. Look at this amazing thing. Yeah, that wrap's really crinkly. Sorry, I haven't unwrapped it yet. I'm not going to crack this open until I start reading them. I mean, it's The Dark Knight Returns. Like, it's my favorite collection of Batman comics. So to have a collector's edition like this is fantastic. I cannot wait to reread them all. And yeah, that's my book haul for my birthday. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time. Leave any comments, subscribe, like. Any suggestions on which of these I should read first if you've read them, let me know. And like I said, I'll see you next time.